Pokemon cards. All right. So, as she said, this is my senior mastery on data collection, structuring, and the analysis for the improvement of the Pokemon trading card game. I like some of my favorite cards, by the way. Okay. So, to introduce my panel real quick, we have Fran, my mother, over here. We have Anna, my sister, over there. We have Dr. Mukamong, who is joining us virtually. She is the assistant professor in digital culture and design in the Department of English at CCU. And we also have Dr. Yancey, who is the associate registrar for information systems at CCU as well. We also have Miss Penn, my teacher, my wonderful teacher. Real quick on the overview of what I'll be talking about why I chose this topic, the research I did behind it, the product that I created, and the journey I went on behind my involvement at AAST, and what my future plans are. Now, why I chose Pokemon. Pokemon includes a lot of teaching, a lot of learning, and a lot of data. I love all three of these things. I love teaching, I love learning, and I love data. Data is one of my favorite things in the world. Information in general, and learning about information and teaching information is just a wonderful combo. Now, another thing I spend a lot of time on is Pokemon. I go to the card shop every two times a week at a local card shop just to play the game. The community is wonderful. They're so welcoming, so heartfelt for new players and stuff like that. And most importantly, it's so fun playing the game. One of the most important things that I learned doing informatics and Pokemon in general is I learned how to learn, which is very important, which is a very important skill in the world in general. Now, some context behind Pokemon as a game. It is a turn-based strategy game that uses a 60-card deck. Each player uses a 60-card deck, and they take turns playing cards and attacking with their Pokemon to eventually take all of their prize cards, all 6 of their prize cards, to win the game. There are multiple ways to win the game, but the most common is to knock out all of your opponent's Pokemon. And one of the big things about Pokemon in general is the main events that happen around the world. All of these events have different names. They're different they're different types of events. Regionals is one of the biggest ones where I've been to around 6 regionals so far, and planning to go to an NAIC, a North American International Championship, which you can gain championship points and travel to Worlds and get a Worlds invite using the championship points, which this year in a Worlds is located in Hawaii. So it's basically just a free trip to Hawaii if you place well. Now, some more on the community. There are lots of different types of players and collectors when playing the game. Professional and competitive players go to a lot of competitive events such as regionals and international championships. Here is a picture of Orlando, which I went to. It had 3,000 players and way more spectators playing to compete for the top seat. It is located in a convention center where there's hundreds of tables and thousands of tables where each player is sat across from each other, playing the game, fighting to see who wins. Some research I wanted to do, or to begin with, the main idea I wanted to accomplish was I wanted to win more. And I wanted to just be better at the game and help others to be better at the game. So I looked for information to help me win more and become better at this game. One of the main sources of information was Poe.com, is an AI that helped me brainstorm ideas and helped me gather information on what the best topic was for my senior mastery. So there were a lot of strengths and weaknesses behind the AI. Some of the strengths were that it gave me so many great ideas. One nameable one was good strategies for early, mid, and late game, which I'll come back to. But one of the weaknesses to the Poe AI was that it wouldn't gather data for me. I would have to go out and seek the data and create the data myself. I then one of the big ideas that the Poe AI told me and Miss Penn told me was that the amount of information in my head would not come across in this presentation well if I just talk about what I know. I would have to take a couple steps back and start from the beginning. So to understand how much I know, I would start with teaching my teacher how to play. I taught Miss Penn how to play, very basic rules and stuff like that. So I would have a better understanding on what the best strategies were for early, mid, and late game. Stuff I do instinctively, I would write down and try to convey to an audience like most of y'all who do not know how to play the game. And one of the things that Dr. Yancey has told me was to use an API that an API, an application programming interface, was going to be very helpful, though I didn't want to enter my own data. So I thought an API was going to be the best option. An API was going to be very useful in this scenario, since all I had to do was connect to a database and I would have all my information there. There were a couple problems though. Using an API required a network that is not a school network. The school network had a lot of limitations and did not accomplish the needs that I had. And I also had the perception that there weren't a lot of databases that would help me in for this project. So a lot of data wasn't relevant, and the school network was holding me back a lot. Another tool I could use was data scraping, which is a tool that collects data from websites and would help me collect raw data and raw information so I could use it to my needs specifically. Now there was a problem with this is that I wasn't very experienced with data scraping. I had never heard of it before until Dr. Yancey had told me about it, and Ms. Penn had taught me about it. I felt like there was a better option for collecting data. So the last idea I had was data collection. It was the idea that using a survey, I would be able to collect information from professional players and ask them very specific questions to answer my very specific questions, or to get very specific answers to my very specific questions. And I didn't see a downside to it. I didn't see that there was going to be a problem with sending out a survey to professionals and getting back information that I needed. Now, a little bit on the survey, I asked various types of questions, and I asked many and I ask many important questions and quantifiable questions. So first we start off with first name, last name, how long you've been playing, and what is your favorite type of deck. Now these questions are just personal questions I ask for fun, just to get a little more personal with the responder. And the next set of questions were 5 ranked questions. These questions would help me quantify how important these game strategies were. And the next set of questions were open-ended questions. Now these questions were a little more difficult to quantify, so I decided to take these questions and quantify them myself, and then validate the data with the previous questions they had answered that were quantifiable. So, in more simpler terms, I take their answer and I take my answer and I combine them to make a conclusion that is a lot more quantifiable rather than guessable and just more of a feeling. And to do this, I use a decision matrix, which is a system that helps me, a system or like a graph that you have different, what's the word for it? I can't remember the word. Aspects.
Criteria.
Criterias. There you go. Thank you. That have different criterias, and you would input the number that they would tell you, and you would decide which one is the most important using a lattice chart in math terms. Now, I didn't see a problem with any of this. I didn't see that the information that I would be gaining was going to be an issue. I felt like all of this was perfect. It was going to be great. Sadly, it all failed. I got 2 answers. I got 2 responses out of like the 25 people I asked. I got 2 answers. What was I going to do with that? I can't quantify data with 2 things. So I had to figure out what I was going to do now. What the heck am I going to do with no data, no information? So I had to look back on what I know, what I like, why I like it, and the previous projects I did. I'm gonna go through a bunch of the projects I've done in the past, real quick. The first project I've ever done in this course was a GPA calculator. The GPA calculator was a very simple Excel spreadsheet that used the VLOOKUP function that basically just took that cell, made a calculation, that was it. That's all it did. It just made a calculation into another cell, or a little block, like one of those things. Like you see the 95, I took that, I found 95 over there, and then I found what GPA it was, and I put it on the one to the right of that. It's basically what a VLOOKUP does. It just takes 2 cells, combines them, and puts them somewhere else. Very simple, very easy to understand, and it didn't really teach me anything academically, since it was a solo project, and it was just our first project. It was just getting a feel to what technologically I would be learning about. The next project was very helpful academically, since it was the first project I learned we did as a team. Every single other project except for my senior mastery would be with the team, and the inventory, the Bath and Body Works inventory system, which okay, wait, hold on. A little explanation on how the course works. The course is the teacher gives us a documentation that tells us, gives us a question that we have to answer. Now the documentation is around like 100 pages long. We're not reading all that, so we're gonna have to learn to go through every single page and pick out all the important information and disregarding the rest of it. One of the main things we learned about this project was that asking questions was so important. Asking questions to the teacher was important. Asking questions to the client that the proposal was given to us by, that was so important that reading all of this information, in the beginning, we took the spreadsheet and we were messing with it, doing literally nothing for the end project. There was no goal we had in mind. We were taking a spreadsheet and using a VLOOKUP function to spit out useless information. So we asked questions. We asked Ms. Penn, hey, do you have data for us? Hey, what is our end goal? Hey, what are we doing? And eventually, she just gave us an answer, which was so helpful that we finished the project in like a week. And it took us like a month to figure out that we can just ask a question, and that's it. And this would come around a lot. This project, we had no idea what we were doing either, because technologically, it was so much more advanced. So, using the information we gained from previous projects, we went to Access, which was a new program that we learned, and we created forms, reports, queries, and switchboards, which would help us technologically and understand what we were going to do for the rest of the course. Now, all this information was gained by the questions we asked and what we wanted to be answered was what am I talking about? I forgot what I was talking about. Okay, yeah. Let me back up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Switchboards and forms, very technologically advanced. So we had to learn how to do all that. Asking questions was very important, as we learned from the previous projects. So we applied it here. We asked questions on how to make a switchboard. We went to Google. Google is so useful. Use Google, please. And then use all the resources you have. We had access, because of the school, we had access to what's the program that was like
Skillshare.
Skillshare, you know what I'm talking about. We had access to Skillshare, which was so important. It helped us learn how to make a switchboard, how to make a form. It was so good. So this project specifically, we had a database which we asked a question, a query. We asked a question, how many people are 50 years old and have a state governed job in this table? So it gave us a report that showed us every single person that was 50-year-old and had a state governed job in this actuary. And then we made a form that told us, or that we would put on a switchboard, which is pretty much just like a dashboard, and you would ask, and this would pop up, and you put in the information you want to know, and you click search, and it spits out a report. Basically what it does. Very simple if you know what you're doing, technologically. So, and originally, we had no idea what we were doing. We didn't know any of the technological sides, so we learned. We used our resources, we learned how to create all of this from scratch. Now this project was very important for real world problems. The Everson database was a project that was a very big project. We created a team called the Collective that included every single person in our class. I think it was like 7 people, right? 7 or 8. I don't remember. It was 8. Okay. 8 people in this team. Originally, we had around 3 or 4 person per team. But for this project, we had 8 people, which was a way larger team, which means all the work was divided up way easier, and which made the project a lot easier, we thought. This project was very difficult. We had to barcode every single item in the inventory system. We had to create so many forms and required reports for the inventory system, and we had to process so much information so that we could give it back to a client that actually exists. Miss Etherson, the teacher for web and digital communications, was having problems with her inventory system, where she didn't know like what items were missing or what things were damaged, stuff like that. So we had to go around her room and then put barcodes on everything, scan them, put them into a database, create forms, create reports on what items were damaged, what items were missing, stuff like that. It was a big project, and it helped us learn a lot about what the real world was going to be like for an informatics major. What questions we had to answer. This was one of the big ones. Inventory systems are very useful for informatics majors, or data science in general. This project was very fun. This is my favorite project out of all of them, was the movie theater ticket sales. Now this project was split up. This is a screenshot from our slideshow that we created, by the way. And at this point, this was course 3, which was my senior year, which included 3 people in our whole class: me, Mason, Dylan. Yay! We had, since it was only 3 of us, we split up the work pretty easily. I had the job of creating the database with MySQL. Dylan had the job of creating the website with HTML, and Mason had the job of linking them together with PHP and hosting the website on Infinity Free. It's just an application that we found on the 5th page of Google because School Network sucks. I'm going to talk about my job specifically. The MySQL was very useful to learn what I like to do. I created scripts and queries for a database that gave answers. I like creating script. I like coding. So learning and doing MySQL and creating a database from scratch, it was very fun. It was a lot of fun, and I got to learn what I like to do. All right, I forgot to skip this. Okay, hang on. Okay, now this leads to my final product for this senior mastery. After I learned what I would like to do, after I learned how to do it, right there, thank you. After I learned how to do it, and after I learned what I like to do, this is what I came up with. I found data from various sources around the internet, namely from like online databases that I found around for Pokemon cards, like any of them. I can pull up a database with raw data. Hang on, I gotta find it. Okay. Okay. So this right here is a table of every single card created from 1998 to 2017, or around that era. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of Charmanders right here, and each of these Charmanders have a different set number. They all have different types, HP, stage, weaknesses, whatever, blah blah blah. So, all of this information, it's a lot of information. As you can see, we have 8,483 rows of information. Rows going this way. That's a lot of information, not including each column. Now, with all this information, I wanted to simplify. I wanted to create a query to showcase how to ask a question for a database and it give an answer for me. One of the questions I asked is, what are every single card from Plasma Blast, which is a set in Pokemon way long ago. I don't remember what year. but it simplified it to 105 rows. So there's only 105 cards in this query right here, which is a lot less than 8,000. So, and by using this, you can create a report which shows all of the, which just basically shows a simplified page that can tell you the set number, the type, the HP, the basic, or the stage, weakness, resistance, and retreat cost for every single card in Plasma Blast. Which, if you're a collector, can be very useful. If you're a player, you can find out which cards you have and which cards are good, and which cards like have the most health, which cards are weak to grass, and stuff like that. And I created a report for 3 different stages. Every card in Plasma Blast, I created a report with every card that has a 4th attack on that card, which is surprisingly only 3 cards. I did not know that. I thought it was going to be more. And every card that is a Black Star promo. Now this report right here is pretty special. It has an image link to it. So let's say we want to look at this Meowth right here. This Meowth, you want to look at it. So you click the link and it opens a new page. Oh wow, look, it's a Meowth. Look at this guy. He's cool. I love Meowth. Meowth is so cool. Anyways. So using these forms and reports and queries, you can pull information from raw data and give an answer to a question you want asked. Back to presentation. I didn't know. Bad. Oh, bad. Please. Okay. Okay. Hello. Okay. All right. Mason, go back to the 21st century skills. Okay. There you go. Thank you. I forgot. I put them in the wrong order. I forgot to change. All right. So, by learning all of this, I learned a lot about learning in general, and these 21st century skills I learned were going to be very useful for anything I do in life. Adaptability, professionalism, problem solving, and community involvement are some of the main skills I learned in this course. Adaptability, I learned a new skill every single project. Professionalism, when sending out the message to the professionals, I kept it very professional. I wrote it like you were writing an email to your boss. So I made it very made it sound very important, and made it sound like I wasn't a robot trying to steal your information. Problem solving, any of these projects can show you if there's a problem, we solved it. Asking questions, asking questions to the teacher, asking questions to our teammates, asking questions to the client, trying to find an answer to the problem that was put in front of us. Community involvement. For this project, I wanted to include new players. I wanted to include casual players, professional players, and competitive players. So I created something that would include all of these people. Involving the community is one of the biggest things I want to do as a teacher, as a learner, and as a friend in general. Real quick on why I chose AAST. Okay. Why I chose AAST, I heard that all of these teachers and all the people here are so cool. They're great at what they do. The teachers, wonderful at their jobs. The people, incredibly friendly. No one, I think we had like, what, one fight in the last 10 years or something like that? Better than sophistry. Oh my god. And the opportunities that we would find at this school were great. Getting certificates and getting a letter of recognition at graduation for doing all these, for pursuing a major in a high school career, it will bring you a long way. Most importantly, it was a lot of fun. Like, this is the most amount of fun I've ever had academically. In the last 2 years, this is the most fun I've ever had at school in general. Last slide. Oh wait, second to last slide. Boom. There you go.
There you
All right. Now let's talk about my future plans. I'm going to major in music teaching because I love teaching and I love music. Therefore, I love music teaching or teaching music. So, I wanted to major in music education at CCU, and I heard the people there, the teachers, they're amazing. Dr. Terranova, Professor Terranova, he is a wonderful teacher. I did private lessons with him for a while. He's great, and I want for data science specifically, I wanted to have something I could fall back on if music teaching wasn't a viable option in the future. So having certificates and graduating from AEST as an informatics major would help me greatly for the future, providing many options for jobs that I like. All right. Do we have any questions? I will go to my panel members first.
First of all, I'm going to give you a round of applause. Well done. And I'm gonna ask this question first, just because we talked about it, but you didn't quite have a chance to get it in there. Do you have any advice for future informatics majors or anybody at AST?
Please ask questions. And this goes for everybody, really. Ask questions about anything. If there's information to be gained, there's information to learn about, and there's information to gain that won't hurt anybody. Like asking questions, it won't hurt anybody. It's just a question. Yeah. It's very useful.
So we're gonna go to your family first. We'll go over here. If you have questions or comments that you'd like to share, I'm gonna scooch our camera around just for a second there for you. Okay. So sister, you're welcome as well.
Yeah. Do you want to go first or me? Alright. I heard you just say that informatics will be a great backup to your music teaching, but do you see that you can use the informatics in your music teaching as well?
A lot of what I learned in informatics was the background theories behind, like, learning. Let's say I want to learn this song, and I learned to ask questions. I learned to use information that I already know to apply it into learning this new song. A lot of what we do in informatics is asking questions and using information that we've already know and applying it to learn more. It's pretty much like an upside down pyramid. You start with nothing, and then you branch off into learning what a VLOOKUP function is. And then you branch off into learning what an access database is. And then you branch off into learning how to create a website from scratch. Like, it just gradually grows. And it's the same thing for music. You learn how to play a C chord, and then you learn how to play 5 different chords, and then you learn how to do complex rhythms like polyrhythms. And then, yeah, it's like the learning process behind everything. It goes hand in hand, and this goes with anything really. Like, let's say you want to learn how a car works. You start with the engine, and then you start with how the engine works. And then you go to how the.
Then you realize you don't know anything
works.
about engines.
Yeah.
Well, I can also throw in there that if you go into education, you will deal with boatloads of data.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, you will definitely use that.
Being a teacher, it's like it's so much information that you need to know, and so much information that you need to give out, and they're like just like Power School. Power School is a big one.
Mhm.
Or like I don't know if college uses Power School.
They use similar tools,
Okay.
yeah. Online
I don't know
tools.
how that works.
That's okay.
Okay, I'll learn.
Do you want to ask me?
Question.
Since you're going to be a music teacher, would you help your kids that you're teaching, like, learn some informatics to help them learn more about what they're supposed to be learning?
I would teach them a lot. Again, I would teach them a lot more about like the theory behind learning, and a lot. Again, a lot what we do in informatics is learning. So, learning how to learn is very important for teaching, because you get a basic understanding of like what each person likes to do and needs to do to learn something new. So when teaching your students new things, it's really important to learn how to teach them, because every person learns differently, and it really shows in informatics, like how it really shows like how each person learns differently at different paces. Some people can learn faster than others, but some people can learn different skills at others better. A good example was in the movie theater project, which was this one. In the movie theater project, I didn't want to do HTML because that's a lot more coding than MySQL. MySQL is a lot more like creating a backend and stuff like that. I didn't really want to like create a website and use a website hosting service and do like all the wires connected to the server and all that bull crap. I don't want to do all that. I just want to create a database and create information and stuff like that. So I learned it through this project that I want to do this. It's the same thing with learning music. I want to learn this specific type of music. I want to learn how to learn this specific type of music. So it's good to understand like just how to learn. So you teach your students how to learn as well.
Awesome.
Any more questions?
Oh, I had one more.
Oh,
Will
go
you
ahead.
go back to the Pokemon research so that you can learn to win more?
Maybe. I'll think about winning. I'm deciding still if I want to be a winner or not.
All right, so we'll go to your online panel now. Let's start with Anna. I'll give you the floor here to comment or question.
Sure. Yeah, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm excited to share a few comments and hopefully suggestions for if you do decide to continue this research in any capacity in your future. The first thing I wanted to say is I really, really loved how process-oriented your presentation was. I appreciated hearing about the things that worked well, the things that were generative, and then also like the hard forks that you had to take in your path because of various like unforeseen circumstances, such as not getting as many responses to your really, really thoughtfully crafted survey that I was like fortunate and honored to take a look at. So I guess just to sort of reiterate from a sort of meta perspective, in the classes that I teach that deal with data collection and survey collection at Coastal, my students often encounter the same thing. So the first thing I wanted to do was to just normalize that this happened to you, normalize it and say, I think it was really impressive how resilient you obviously were throughout the process. I think especially since you were reaching out to professional players, that was a more likely response than if you were reaching out to amateurs. So I think it's impressive to me that you weren't deterred by that. I also really appreciated your emphasis throughout, not just for this project, but when you were describing other projects that you've done with Ms. Penn, your emphasis on the importance of asking questions and sort of, I guess the phrase is cliched to say kind of swallow your pride and ask the question, but I encounter this truly daily in the classroom. In the digital culture and design classroom, students think that if they ask a question, it might indicate that they weren't paying attention when something was explained the first time, or that they're stupid, which is truly never the case. So I think asking questions with an open heart is going to serve you really well with your music and your teaching career, and with all of your future endeavors. So I really appreciated your attention to that in the presentation. I have now like a couple of, I guess, suggestions, and then one question that I'm hoping you can elaborate on more. The first suggestion is, in light of the fact that the data collection via survey method only yielded those 2 responses, I actually just wanted to return your attention to the concept of iterativity and iteration in your method, because on that slide, that beautiful slide you had with scraping and survey collection on the same slide, that might have been, and especially if you had more time for the project or were going to return to it in the future, that might have been an opportunity to return to the scraping method, because one of the things that's really beneficial about data scraping is that the data already exists on the internet somewhere, and you're not waiting for people and kind of like crossing your fingers and hoping for them to respond. Now, of course, I get it that that data might not have existed in exactly the same format that you were going to get it with your own survey, because your exact survey with your exact questions doesn't exist on the internet as a database, a repository of people's responses to it. I totally get that. But in the absence of the latter, which was your preference, you could have scraped and then kind of gotten a different result. It would have been not what you wanted, but it would have been a higher volume of data to work with and process. So that was just one thought. I think I'll end just with my question, which was related to this, and it was about, what did the 2 responses say that you did get to your survey? I wanted to kind of hear more about that, and also as a prompt, one of the things that I've encouraged students to do when they got a smaller yield on a survey that they put out in my classes is to contact the respondents and say, can we have a more extended conversation, which takes more of the form of like a sociological or an ethnographic interview with those respondents, so that you can hear a little bit more about like their story than they necessarily would have put and typed out in the survey. So I know that was a lot. I guess to summarize, super curious what those 2 respondents did say. And yeah, any responses or thoughts that you have in response would be cool. I just said response like 4 times. Anyway, cool.
Right.
Thank you so much.
So those responses, I don't think I can pull them up. I don't have the link to the actual.
If you have the form, you can. If you have the right form, you can.
No, I sent the
I got you.
link to the.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I can pull it up on this computer.
Okay.
But the responses, they were pretty much what I wanted. They ranked the questions, and the open-ended questions were they were, I would say, okay for how much detail they gave me. I guess I could rank them myself, but they weren't like perfect. They weren't as extensive as I hoped. So even if like I got 100 responses, I don't know how much of those 100 responses would have been as quantifiable as I hoped.
So that deeper interview might have been
The deeper
way
interview
to
might have
go.
helped a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you to jump to add to this. Did you ultimately end up doing some data scraping?
Yes. We.
Because we tried. We did a little.
Yeah, we tried to do a little after the fact of the survey not working.
Mm-hmm.
We did do a little data scraping, which
And why did you abandon that?
we abandoned it because I still did not know how it worked, and the information wasn't the best.
So, yeah.
It still wasn't the information I needed.
Right. Okay. Cool. So let's go now to Dr. Yancey.
I would first like to say you have now joined a very storied group of people who have attempted surveys and not gotten the responses they needed. I've done it. A bunch of people I know have done it. It's a thing we learn. So it's a thing you learn through the process. So I love that you actually went through the whole process, that, you know, you realized at some point that like this wasn't going to happen and you pivoted, because as a teacher, you will learn how to modify and adjust. Things are going to come at you. Situations are going to come at you. They're not going to necessarily be what you anticipated when you thought this out ahead of time. So I love that you were able to just kind of take it in stride and kind of keep moving with your next option. One of the suggestions I really liked about the follow-up, as you follow up with these people, remember everything that you're doing, and you talked about this a lot in your presentation, you're learning, right? So we're either winning or we're learning. So this thing didn't work. Why not, right? Are you never going to do a survey again in your life? That's probably not true. So if you were able to talk to any of these people later, even some inquiries about why did you respond, right? So you're kind of learning about what are those things that caught me, you know, oh, well, it was the email was first thing in the morning and it was the first thing I read, so I thought I'd respond. You know, that might be something you don't know that helps you iterate further into the future about, okay, how do I adjust these future attempts to increase my results? So regardless of what you're doing, like we talked about these, you know, informatics projects, and, you know, the question becomes, you know, how much of this correlates over to a music education career? Surprisingly, a lot of it, right? And it's not necessarily, you know, technical skills. I mean, how much PHP connection am I doing in music education? Maybe not a lot, right? But the process of learning these new things are very similar across all these domains. You talked about, like, the first project you did was VLOOKUP, right?
Yes.
My wife's a teacher, uses VLOOKUP all the time, right? So she's got her class roster, and she did this survey for who wants, you know, prom tickets, and she's got these responses. Who hasn't responded? I taught her VLOOKUP, so now she knows VLOOKUP. So you would be amazed how often these things come up in the future. And don't discount what you've learned throughout this process. And so my question to you was GPA calculator. You talked about doing the GPA calculator. Is that something you knew beforehand? Did you know how to hand calculate a GPA before you started this project?
I did not. I did not know. Like, I had a very basic understanding of how a GPA worked. Like, I was like, in honors class. Hold on, go back to the GPA thing for a second. This one. Okay. So I had a basic understanding of, like, an honors class was like the maximum was like a 5 or something, and I was wrong. And an AP class was like a 6. But I didn't know all the numbers in between. So creating a GPA calculator was very useful for understanding how a GPA works, and it'll help me a lot, especially as a music teacher. Which this is the same thing Power School uses. It just takes a GPA graph, and it takes your grade, and it combines both of them, and it uses VLOOKUP functions to spit out what your GPA is.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So I work in the registrar's office at the university, so I run into students every day who don't know how to calculate their GPA. They've literally never been taught what components go into figuring out this like momentously important number in their academic lives. And so I just think it's great that that's one of the projects that you guys do.
The first project.
And then my last, I guess this is more of a comment than a question, is you talked about your movie ticket project.
Yes.
And you said, did you say the whole class worked on this?
It was a class of 3 people.
Okay. So one of the things that you mentioned during your presentation that I really wanted to drive home, because you'll find this over and over again in your life, is, you know, I had this project that had X amount of work in it, and there were 3 of us, so I should only do a third of the work, right? But you find that when you work in teams that there is some added work to the team dynamic management of it. Did you notice that?
Yes, definitely. Especially with like the original first project, there was a lot of problems with like deciding how, like, for example, what the best individual prototype was, what aspects from his prototype versus her prototype, and we would combine them and decide whether how the final product would work. And leading up to this project, the movie theater ticket one, the 3 of us, we all learned how to do basic HTML, we all learned how to do basic PHP and MySQL, and we all learned how to link a website together. Though, and some of us learned more specifically into that aspect than others, though we still had to combine ideas, and all of us had different ideas. I'm pretty sure we made 3 different web pages for 3 different theaters, and each of them were designed differently, each of them worked differently, each of them had different information on them, and it was interesting to see like each of our brains think differently, and it's a little difficult to combine them. For this project specifically, it was a lot easier since we could just make a different web page. Yeah, it's a lot more difficult with the team, in my opinion, than individually.
And team dynamics is an area of study just like every other area of study. So as you're kind of moving into that teacher education role, you know, things about how do I do group projects, and like how do I break things up, and how do I structure, you know, the materials I give the students, are all areas of research. They're all areas that you can learn about. So you've learned to ask questions, keep asking questions. A lot of the things you're going to encounter maybe don't even exist yet, right? Mm-hmm. So teachers are now dealing with AI that they didn't deal with 2 years ago. And you're going to experience that as you move off into your career as well. So just keep asking questions. I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we're getting close to lunchtime, so I'm going to quickly ask if we have a few students here in the room. Does anybody have a question out here? Do you want a question or comment? We'll go with Mason.
So as somebody who has existed around you for upwards of 2 years now, I do think that, do you see the value in kind of the work that we've done in informatics in almost every field you talked about today, in both music and even like game theory, the value in understanding the dynamics of a team and kind of the alternative teaching methods we got, where we were kind of just like lost in the dark. I don't know if this was more about you, but for me, like there were multiple times where we were just straight up just lost in the projects.
I think definitely in a lot of the projects, I'd say every project, we were lost in the dark for anywhere from like a couple days to a couple weeks, where we were just mindlessly doing random tasks, accomplishing.
Or so you
nothing.
thought.
Yeah, and then eventually we learned like those aimless tasks, they were helpful. They were very helpful, and this applies to like everything. Like let's say I wanted to create a song. in like a music song. Let's say we're on created some music. They my brain would be lost for a couple of days, like thinking, oh, do I want to write this lyric or this lyric? Oh, do I want this bass line or that bass line? Like you'd be stumbling around to see what works and what doesn't. And a lot of the theory behind music is like what sounds good and what doesn't sound good. Like let's say, for example, a tritone doesn't sound good, but a third does sound good. So you use a third instead of a tritone, and a lot of it reflects on how we do informatics in these courses. Like, oh, we learned that this doesn't work, but this works. We learned that doesn't work, but this works.
Would you say your tolerance for those failures is higher?
Yes, definitely. I've gotten a lot way more used to like how it works. Eddy, you can leave. No, get out of here, Katie. Man, get out of here.
We got people who are gotta go to lunch. But,
Go eat food.
well, if anybody else want to ask a question or a comment officially? All right. We thank everybody for being here. I'm gonna hop in and thank our guests. Family, don't leave. We're gonna take a picture real quick. And I'll give you my comments later, but bravo, you, like always, hyperfixation in the last hours brought you through to a really great product. And that's okay. I've always said that, as long as you know when you're gonna get the work done, I'm good. I'll be nervous, but I'm good. It was great.
We made it work.
We made it work, that's right. So thank you to both of you. I really appreciate your being here. That's the first of 3, so we'll see you back again for some more.
Congratulations. Thanks for having us.